My name's Naftali Ben-David. I'm a Washington correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Roland Burris, who was nominated by Governor Blagojevich to be the next senator from Illinois. Today, there were some pretty interesting developments because Mr. Burris showed up at the Senate asking to be seated as a new senator. This was the day that the next Senate convenes, and he claimed that he was a legitimately appointed senator. But the officials of the Senate rejected him. It was quite a bit of political drama and theater. He was turned away, and he walked out into the rain where he was surrounded by an absolute crowd of reporters and onlookers. And he told everybody who was gathered around him that he was Senator Roland Burris, the junior senator from the state of Illinois, and that's how he viewed himself. But of course, leading Democrats don't see it that way. They believe that his appointment was so compromised by the ethical problems of Governor Blagojevich that it's not legitimate. Technically speaking, the Secretary of State of Illinois, Jesse White, refused to certify the nomination and the appointment. And so therefore, Democrats are sort of using that to say, well, it's not a properly handled appointment. But really what's going on here is a much larger strategic struggle. The Democrats don't want to seat this guy who was appointed by a heavily tainted governor because they think it will cause them all kinds of political problems. They don't want to be associated with Governor Blagojevich's ethical problems. So they're trying to delay the process to sort of set it aside in the hopes that sooner rather than later, Governor Blagojevich would either resign or be impeached, and a new governor would appoint someone, whether Mr. Burris or someone else, and the whole process could resume. But Mr. Burris believes that he's the senator from Illinois. There's indications he may go to court to get that appointment validated. And we may end up with a very interesting court case that could easily go to the Supreme Court that sort of asks how much control senators should have about who belongs to the Senate. Is it really up to them, or is it up to the governor in this case? I mean, how much authority do they really have to decide who belongs? No one here is, by the way, questioning anything about Mr. Burris. They're not questioning his capability, his reputation, his ethics, nothing like that. All they're questioning is the governor who appointed him, and therefore, by extension, they're questioning Mr. Burris himself. In some ways, I think it was a very clever pick by Mr. Blagojevich, because Mr. Burris does have an unquestioned record of being ethical and responsible and everything else. He's also an African American, and that adds a whole dimension to the case, because Mr. Obama, when he becomes president, will leave the Senate with no African American members. You could make the case that a country that's 10% African American should have at least a few senators that are African American. And so in doing that, he's injected a certain racial element to it, which some members of Congress, notably Bobby Rush, who's an African American congressman from Illinois, have spoken of very directly, saying that, look, there should be at least one black person in the Senate, and he's very happy about the Burris appointment. So that just adds a very complicating and emotional aspect to the whole thing. For the Wall Street Journal, this is Naftali Ben-David in Washington.